between 66 and 70. You got it. You said it a while ago. It's 68. Okay? 68 is the third quartile. Now here is where it gets goofy on us. What does the third quartile break? Which quarters does it break up?
Second and fourth.
Second and third, no. Third and fourth.
Think about high school graduation. Where did you graduate in your high school graduation class?
The first and second.
Breaks between the first and second. God, this is so stupid.
Why do you think this?
The third quartile is the break between the first and second quarters. The second quartile is the break between the second and the third quarter.
The second's the break between the second and third?
Between second and third.
Okay.
And the first quartile
Between the third and fourth.
between third and fourth.
Is there a reason for that?
I would just start up there and talk about 95th percentile, 5% or above it. So it's the top 5%. So it's third quartile, breaks top quarter, the first quarter, from the second quarter. What is the third quartile?
68.
What is the first quartile? We know the second one was 79. What is the first quartile?
86.5.
Because it is halfway between 85 and a half and 87 and a half. Right? Or
Oh, I understand.
halfway between 86 and 87. Huh?
Wait, what is the?
Okay? And I don't know if we even ought to do this foolishness. You may never see it again. Seriously. Look at the journals and stuff and see if you see this kind of numeric kind of stuff. But if you do, when you do, you'll have seen it before. You should understand something about dispersion and dispersion of data that are not Kyle normally distributed, whatever that means. Okay? Whatever that means. And quartiles help us in breaking that up, so then we talk about interquartile range. So now what is the interquartile range? Now be careful here because it's not the same as that range. That number 86 and a half is exactly what?
First quartile.
It is the first quartile. What is that number? Is it 86 and a half or is it a range? It's 86 and a half. It's not rounded off. It is 86.5. Isn't it? Halfway between 85 and 86. And we said, really, 86 and 87. We said that's really 85 and a half up to 87 and a half. Either one of those numbers that we use, either pair, halfway between is exactly 86 and a half. It's not rounded off. It is precise. It's 86 and a half. What is the third quartile?
68.
What was it?
68.
68.
Is that halfway between 66 and 70? Is that what we're saying?
That's actually the first quartile, isn't it?
Why is
That's actually the first quartile.
I thought it was the first quartile was 86.5.
These numbers are upside down. Okay, let's start all over again.
I
Okay?
have a question for you.
Whoa,
Wait,
oh man,
So is the first quartile just not the top 25%? No?
yes.
It
the-
indicates
the-
where the
No, the
25%
first quarter is the top 25%.
Okay.
Okay,
So first
what are the
quarter-
top 25% scores?
The top 5
Okay,
scores.
86 to 99.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 87 to 99. Okay,
Oh,
it's 87 to
gosh, because I
99.
have to take out all the
So
extra
this
that's
right
added in
here-
there.
This right here is the third quartile. Let me do it like this.
The third quartile because it's the fourth quarter.
No, that's the first quarter.
First quarter, I mean.
So third?
Here, you want me to put another direction?
Yes, you just
From
have-
high
And can we
level.
eliminate the duplicates? Because that's what we have to do, correct?
No.
What's that chart called that has the box and the lines?
A box and which is bullet points.
That's it. Yeah, that's a really helpful way of visualizing this.
Do that.
Box and which
It's
is
on the
bullet.
last slide of, or second to last slide of
Yeah.
the
A box
slides
and.
in the green
Yeah.
paper, so whatever. It's really tiny and kind of hard to read.
Yeah.
Why do you know that?
I don't-
Taking a couple statistics in this.
He used to study.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Look, I've done it all.
It's on the
Oh,
underground.
they
Just do not listen.
Oh, man.
It'll actually go on the line.
Gotta win something.
Oh, gosh.
No vending machine kudos today.
Okay.
Start the last.
So the top there's 21 scores again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drop like
Can you
this.
highlight them all there?
Let's look at them again. Yeah, you got it on there, don't you?
Okay. Is it the exact same numbers? No, that's just
No.
a graph. Okay.
One, two, three, four, five. Because the first 5 numbers are both correct.
Well, I mean, that's just rational because you know it's 79.
The midpoint, because it's the 11th number.
That's all we know. 79. Very nice.
You know what that is? 3,
Point.
3 of them. It's exactly,
Second, third.
exactly equal to 68, not 67 and a half to 68 and a half to 68. This right here is the third, I'm sorry, the first quartile,
Gotcha.
and it divides shouldn't have put them fast backwards like that. Does that make sense? It should, I said it right and had the numbers up there upside down. The top quarter is the first quarter, but it is the third quartile that separates the first quarter from the second quarter. On the other hand, the first quartile separates the third from the fourth quarters. In a second. How many aisles are there for, what determines the number of aisles that there are? One less than the number of categories, of divisions that you want. So deciles,
And so you have 9.
there are 9 deciles. Percentiles,
99.
99. You can say, well, what is 0%? And then 0 to 99.
You didn't take a test.
Getting
I was
pretty technical
determined
there.
by
Didn't
one
put the
less
name on
than
it.
the number of what?
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 The aisles, the number of aisles quartiles is determined as one less than the number of categories that you're going to have. You want to divide something into twos, into halves. How many aisles do you need to have to divide something into halves? One. You want to divide stuff into thirds? You just have to have two. Okay? You want to divide it into quarters? Have three. Keep going. All right. So, what is then interquartile range?
It would be from.
Second and third quartiles combined?
It'd be from the.
It combines somebody, those have width.
It'd be from the first quartile to the third quartile.
It's the first quartile subtracted from the third quartile.
How do you, can you visually show us how to find interquintile and intersextile or intertertile so that, because it's going to be different for each one. Is it just each category spanning the 50?
Well, yes, but see, if you have what is, non-aisles?
Yeah,
That's
9.
nine,
So that's
you have 8
difficult
of
because
them.
you have odd, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, they're
So then what?
in an they're in an inner non-aisle range that I've ever heard of.
Okay, so we're not gonna have to.
Nah, you're not gonna have to do, this would be the most you'd ever have to see is this interquartile range. Okay. What's the third quartile? In this case, it is precisely 86.5. And what is the third quartile, first quartile?
68.
It is 68. So what is the interquartile range?
18.5.
Okay. Now, don't forget, if we're talking about the range on these data, it is 43. If we're talking about the interquartile range, it is 18 and a half. Now, when we come back from break, then we're going to identify one other thing. Do you remember what I asked you or told you or wondered if you?
Oh my gosh. Mine is 68.
I think I asked you this. This was just a lame question at the end. It's not in almost any textbook, but I found it. I learned it in 1970. What? The semi-interquartile range. Look in all the books and stuff and see if you find semi-interquartile range, and you won't. And yet we'll see that it's a pretty good number, but we don't ever see it. Stupid. Let's take our break late. We'll come back about 10 till and go for another hour. We've got our first 80 minutes in, whatever it was, 90 minutes, 100 minutes. Take a 10-minute break, come back for our next hour. Okay?
Well,
Oh, yes.
We wanna know what you're doing.
I have a contract before this, and the guy always goes right to the end. And today, I had to change uniforms because it was raining. I was not about to get the other ones wet because they